I never really wanted to tell my story just to tell it. I I really value the power of information. And so to me, my story needed to be informative in some way. So I never really asked myself, what can I tell? Instead, I was constantly asking myself, what can I teach? What can I do with this information that allows anyone to learn from me, to learn from my experience, to learn from the things that I've learned, and how can I convey that in a way that's impactful, in a way that matters to people, so that they can use it as a resource or as a tool or as even something that just gives them hope, that helps them get a little further along on their path towards healing. And that really took years of discussion with experts and other survivors. And there was this, I suppose I'll call it this isolated introspective period where I'm really trying hard to dig deep into my own experience and my framing of it, and at the same time trying to understand what people were seeing about me, trying to see myself through the eyes of other people, because so many times what people were saying was not coinciding with the reality of what I was experiencing or what I felt was the reality of me. And I couldn't figure out why that was until one night I'm just kind of scrolling through my own posts, and I'm looking at all of these pictures and all of these memories, and I'm like, wow, those were good times. And they were good times, and they were beautiful moments. But all you saw was the moment. All you saw was that snapshot. And I'm looking at it differently. I'm looking at that photo and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe I made it there. Because I remember what I went through before, what it took to even get to that moment. And then I remember what I experienced in the aftermath, trying to hold on to that moment, because I knew that in the aftermath there would be an experience that would not be as beautiful as that moment was. And it really made me understand that there was so much more to what was going on with me and what was going on in my experiences that I just wasn't conveying. And I really had to be honest with myself about why that was. And that's what led to Pretty Pain, how this whole concept came about. I really wanted to integrate my experience, the perception of my experience, and come back to a place where I felt my story and my experiences were centered and were in alignment, not only for myself, but especially for those of you who have supported me and watched me and encouraged me and have done so much for me. I felt like there was this need to put it all together so that we were all on the same page, so that as I continue and I graduate, so to speak, from survivor to advocate and activist and founder, that you've seen the journey firsthand, or at least you can feel like you've seen the journey firsthand, because now you know what went into every little moment that you saw on social media, but you didn't necessarily hear about behind the scenes where I was sharing it. And so when I was trying to put together the first episode, I had to first decide what I was even going to say. What experience am I going to highlight out of all of them? And it took me doing some of my own research and speaking with other people who had either been a supporter of a survivor or a survivor themselves about what do you feel matters most? If someone were telling you their story, what would you want to hear? And the response that I got most often was the one that changed you. The experience where you knew that you were going to be different from now on. What moment changed you? And I knew right away what moment I was going to talk about. And it was this one. This experience, number one, in and of itself, if you separate the experience itself from my experience, absolutely beautiful. This was an organization that I have so much love for, and I could not have felt more blessed to be a part of it. I loved the women in this organization. I loved everything that it stands for in the community. And it holds such a special place in my heart to where no matter what I went through that day internally, this moment will forever be one of the best experiences I had. But that doesn't change the fact that there was some trauma and darkness attached to that moment. And that belongs solely to me and has nothing to do with what was going on here. In fact, this experience, after I was able to really get through it, and I hate to put it that way, but I had to push myself through it. That's the reality. But once I did, I was so glad I was there. It was what I needed, and it was very healing for me. But in that moment, in that experience, there was something that I was carrying that I wasn't talking about. And I remember when I was on my way to this event, I was thinking to myself the whole way there, you should just go home, just back out. It's fine. Tell someone you're sick. Tell someone you can't make it. Tell someone whatever. Just go home. You shouldn't be here. This is a bit ridiculous after what you've been through. Why are you even here? And I pull up and I park and I look at the building and I'm like, I can't do this. I can't go in there. And I just remember I start having the worst panic attack. I start shaking. I start tearing up and I'm like, you should not have come. Why are you here? And suddenly all of the memories started flooding back. Just days before this, I had been strangled, and it was a moment where I thought that I would not necessarily get to see the next moment. I really did not think that I was going to live through that experience. And it was something that, as they said, what moment changed you? This was the moment that changed me. Because when you are in a moment where you feel like all the next moments of your life are about to be taken from you, you change without even trying. You become different without even trying. There's no effort there, it just happens. When you're not able to breathe, when you can't form a single thought, when you can't even defend yourself, you feel like you're not a person anymore. You're just not a person. You don't matter anymore. Someone has the power of life and death in their hands, and they're taking it from you. They're taking your very life from you. And that's something that you don't just get over when it's over. You carry it with you. And I carried it into this experience. And I remember just trying to figure out how I was going to navigate this experience in a way that would help me to, number one, show up and do what I committed to do and not take away from the experience that we were all having. It wasn't about me. It was a very significant moment for all of us and for the partner organization that we were helping. And I never wanted to do or say anything or express anything that might take away from that moment for everyone. And so I'm trying to navigate mentally. How am I going to pull this off? I can't eat. My throat is on fire. my throat is so tight to where I worry about what might happen to me during that time. Am I going to be able to control it? Am I going to be able to hide it, to mask it? And then I'm also wondering, okay, how am I actually going to physically get through this? Because I had so much physical pain in my neck to where I could not comfortably move my head this way or that way or in any direction. Any movement of my neck resulted in excruciating pain. And I knew that there was going to be a lot of movement that day because we were painting a mural outside. And I knew I was going to be bending and moving and then just interacting with everyone. I really didn't know how I was going to do that in a way that was, number one, going to be safe for me, to where I wouldn't suffer so much in the aftermath, but at the same time, how I was going to navigate that moment in a way that just made me seem completely normal. I mean, just to put it plainly, how can I look normal? How can I mask this so much to where I can get through this moment, I can get through this experience and enjoy it, and then I can go home? So there was so much going on for me mentally and physically. And I felt like I was hiding it really well up until I remember this moment where we got to lunch and I had the worst panic because eating was something that I was afraid to do. I certainly didn't want to do it in front of everybody else. And I remember sitting there and staring at my lunch, and one of my good friends was sitting right next to me. And she looks at me and she goes, "Are you okay? You look down. You look different." And I remember being, number one, embarrassed that she noticed. I wasn't hiding it well enough because she picked up on it. But then after that moment passed, I remember thinking to myself, she can see me. And I felt human again. For the first time in quite a few days, I felt human again. I felt like I existed again because she saw me. She didn't see me as the teammate or volunteer. She saw me as the human being. She noticed that something wasn't quite right about me that day. And I just remember feeling this overwhelming love and appreciation for her because just in that moment, and she had no idea, but just in that moment, she made me feel like a human being again. I was seen in my true form and not for any performance or anything that I was putting on trying to hide. She saw right through it, and I just remember feeling a little bit more healed and a little bit more human because of her. So fast forward to this moment. This is when we were all outside. This was kind of the final moment. This was what we all came to do, was to paint this mural. And I remember looking around at everybody there, and I had such conflicting thoughts and feelings because on one side, I'm like, I'm so glad I'm here. I love to be around all these women. This energy is wonderful. This is what I love to do more than anything. I've always been somebody who really just enjoys service. It's a part of who I am. And I was glad to be in that moment. And then comes the fear, those overwhelming thoughts, that anxiety that can be crippling, where I'm thinking, how am I actually going to get through this? And then I start strategizing and thinking, okay, well, if I turn this way, and then I turn this way, and then I move like this, and then I move like that, then I don't have to move my neck, and then everything will be fine. But in reality, it doesn't work that way. You're just kind of trying to get through the moment in a way that helps you to do what you agreed to do, what you come to do, which is to be of service to that organization. And so I kind of just had to let go of all of that need to control and strategize and just do what I signed up to do. And so I remember posing for that picture, and I'm thinking, please hurry, please hurry. We don't need 2 and 3 takes, just please take the picture, because I'm in so much pain because I actually did end up moving my neck and turning, and I was holding back tears. I was getting so anxious. and I just didn't know how much more I could take. And once that photo was taken, I unfortunately don't have any recollection of the rest of the day. I don't remember any of it. And I think that's because there was so much trauma and so much of that darkness that I was trying to manage in a way that would not be noticeable to anybody else, that it took up all my bandwidth and I couldn't focus on anything else. So after that moment, I really don't have any other memory of that event. Everything just kind of comes in pieces and spots, and I don't have an entire narrative for it. All I remember is trying to manage and control the pain and the suffering that I was experiencing. But I do remember the feeling, and I remember feeling that I really was glad that I came. And despite what I went through in that experience, it was something that I needed. It was something that healed me on some level. But I remember when we're leaving, I'm getting back in my car and I look at the building again and I think to myself, you can't do this anymore. Like you've got to stop. But realistically, I couldn't. I had 10 more events in the pipeline after that. That was just number one. And I'm driving home and I just start bursting into tears. And I can't tell you why. I don't know if it's because of the pain I was in or if I was coming to these realizations that I had a lot on my plate and this new event, this new occurrence made it far more difficult to accomplish these things. And I knew that it was going to be something that I was going to either have to struggle through or just quit entirely. And I already knew that quitting wasn't going to happen. So I think more or less I was just crying because I was overwhelmed at everything that had come at me, everything that I knew I would have to face if I carried on, and not knowing when the pain was going to end. And then I get home, and those are the worst moments. You try to hold on to what you experienced, what was beautiful about the experience you were just in, but it doesn't last. You get home and it's over, everybody's gone, and you're by yourself. And I remember being in my bed and thinking, this is this is what's real. Suddenly everything that I was doing felt like a fantasy, like an escape. And what I was experiencing in that moment all alone was my reality. And I remember being in so much physical pain and not knowing how I was going to get through the night, not knowing if I was going to be able to get through the night because I didn't know how much more damage I had done to myself from being in that experience. What a lot of people don't know about strangulation is that a person can die in the days or even weeks after the attack. So just because they survived that moment, that doesn't necessarily mean they survived the event. So for me in this experience, the danger of not surviving was still very real. And I was still very scared and I had no idea what power I had to help myself or what type of danger I was actually in. Was I going to have a stroke? Was I going to have a seizure? Was I going to lose oxygen? Because those are all things that can happen to a person in the aftermath of being strangled. And I had already known this and I didn't know what it meant for me. And for so many survivors, there are no physical manifestations of that strangulation. So people around them have no idea what they've been through unless they speak up. So many symptoms come in the days and weeks following, and you can attribute those symptoms to anything. Sometimes a survivor can experience mood or personality changes that causes them to be aggressive in some way. Sometimes survivors can experience hoarseness, sore throat, dizziness, fainting spells, things that can be attributed to other illnesses. And so a lot of times when someone is suffering from the effects of strangulation, they don't know that they are. And that's why this type of attack, this type of violence is so deadly and so dangerous, because we really don't know what a person has experienced and what that impact is until sometimes it's just too late. Similarly, when it comes to the long-term or lifetime effects of strangulation, survivors can experience traumatic brain injuries that are similar to those seen in professional athletes. So what happens then is they can experience things like long-term memory loss or even cognitive disabilities. And that's important to know, not only as a survivor, but as someone who is an ally, a supporter, or even a victim's rights advocate. Being educated on the long-term damaging effects of strangulation on survivors is key to educating the community, to educating law enforcement, to educating the criminal legal system, so that survivors can find the resources and support that they need in the immediate aftermath to try to mitigate some of these lifetime and long-term effects. For me, as a survivor, what I've experienced is still with me to this day, and I've had to come to accept that my experience is going to be with me throughout my life. It's going to permeate everything that I do, everything that I experience, and that's all a part of my healing and grieving process so that I can come to terms with it and make the best of what I can with my life moving forward. I know that the memories, the emotions, the things that come with surviving such traumatic experiences, they never really go away. They can lessen over time, but they never completely disappear. And I think if you are a survivor, or if you were still currently trapped in a dangerous situation, it's important to know that there are people out there like myself, like other advocates and activists and resources out in your community who understand what you've been through, who can empathize with you and are ready to help you. So please don't hesitate to call someone, to call the domestic violence hotline, to call your local women's shelter, to call anyone that you know is a safe person that can help you get out of your situation, or if you're already out of it, can help you move forward with your life in a way that brings you joy, that brings you peace, and that brings you comfort. There are people out here who care, there are people out here who are ready to help you, and there are people out here who will support you every step of the way. And it's important that you understand that and that you reach out. That's the first step to getting out, staying out, and thriving in the aftermath of domestic violence, especially if you've experienced something as severe as domestic strangulation. While this has been extremely difficult for me to recount and to even build up the courage to put out there into the world, I hope that it's been helpful. I hope that you've learned something. I hope that you can now see me a little bit more clearly and understand that whatever you see on the outside when it comes to other people may not be the whole story. There may be things that a person is dealing with that you could not imagine. And I hope that you know that you can relate to far more people than you realize, and that if you need a shoulder to cry on, if you need someone to simply sit with you in your moments, that person may be closer than you think, and they may come in a package that you might not expect. So I hope that my story so far has helped you even just a little bit, even if it's just giving you a moment where you feel less alone. If I've done that much for you, then I'm glad that I've put this out there. And I hope that as we move forward through this series, you'll learn more about me, and maybe I can learn more about you, and we can move forward together. So with that, I say thank you so much for listening, for even being here and coming this far with me, and I look forward to seeing you in episode 2.